Friends, we're going to begin, so if you'll please take your seats. We do have copies of the Siddur here below, if anyone would like a photocopy. Otherwise, we'll have to share, given the number of books we have.
We'll begin the Ma'ariv service on page 26, and we rise for the Baruch Hu.
V'hurachem mechaperavon v'lo yashchit v'erbala shiva po v'lo ya'ir kol chamato Adonai Hoshia hamelach yanenu v'yom kor'enu Baruch Hu et Adonai hamborach Baruch Adonai hamborach leolam va'ed Baruch atah.
We may be seated.
Ehel chai v'kayam, tamim lokalenu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim, ahavat olam Beit Yisrael.
Page 29 at the bottom. Let's read responsively in the English. Page 29 at the bottom of the page. With everlasting love have you loved us, O God, revealing yourself to us through Torah and mitzvot.
Your love is also revealed through our dear ones, whose love has a benediction in our lives.
For we have known the blessings of love and caring, and death cannot take these gifts from us.
Your love, O God, is revealed as well in our strength to carry on, to find our way again.
But while pain and suffering are real, your healing power is at work in our lives,
enabling us to endure our sorrow, to transform our pain, and to find courage to go on.
In the darkness of our grief, O Lord, may rays of understanding shine forth,
that we may grow in wisdom and perform deeds of loving kindness,
nurturing our heritage of love and Torah, which reveal your presence anew in every age.
Le'ahavatecha al tasamimenu olamim, Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha, u'v'chol nafshecha, v'chol me'odecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh, asher anochi mitzavecha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha b'veitecha, uv'lechtecha v'aderech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu l'totafot bein einecha, u'chtavtam amzuzot beitecha, uv'ihish arecha, v'haya im shmotish. Sometime. Lama'an tizkor v'azil. Adonai Elohechem emet.
Page 36.
Ve'emunah kol zov v'gemalin. U'malachuto baratzon kibel lehem Moshe u'vnei Yisrael chanishura b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam. Mi chamocha be'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nidra kodesh, nora tilot osef eleh. Malchutecha rovanecha, bokerem lifnei Moshe, ze'eli anu v'yamru, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'emar ki fada Adonai Yaakov v'golomia chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, gal Yisrael. Ashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom.
We read responsively on the bottom of page 39. Help us, O God, to lie down in peace and awaken us with confident trust for tomorrow.
Strengthen those whose burden or sorrow with grant patience, courage, and strength.
Guide them, O Lord, with your good counsel. Direct them toward the path of serenity.
Shield them, we pray, from every enemy, from fear, from anxiety, from despair.
Help them to feel protected and sheltered, sustained even in grief by your compassion.
Guard them this night and every night. Bless them with healing and hope.
Help them, O Lord, to lie down in peace. Awaken them with confident trust for tomorrow.
U'shmor tzeitenu uvoin l'chaim u'l'sholom ata v'yad olam baruch ata Adonai shomer amo Yisrael la'ad.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai l'olam.
Continue on page 40.
Baruch Adonai Baruch. Adonai Melech, Adonai Melech, Adonai Melech Le'olam Va'ed. Ki hamalchut shecha hi u'le'emed atimloch b'chavod. Ki ein lanu melech ela ata Baruch ata Adonai. HaMelech b'chvodo tamid imloch aleinu le'olam va'ed ve'al kol ma'asav.
Page 44, we rise.
Yitkadal v'yikadash shmei rabah. Yalma divrach kirotei v'mlich machutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedecha beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei rabah b'varach le'olam u'lamei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitram v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitadeh v'ytalal shmei d'kudisha v'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen.
We recite the Amidah quietly, beginning on page 46. Continue at the top of page 60.
Kadal v'yikadash shmei rabah.
Amen.
Yalma divrach kirotei v'mlich machutei b'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayedecha beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabah b'varach le'olam u'lamei maya. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
תתקבל צודון ובודון לכל ישראל קודם ובונדי וישמעיה ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Page 62.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. שנה שמיים. על כן נקווה לך אדוני אלוהינו. כך כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, וחיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד.
Warner's Cottage, page 68.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויעלמה דברה קרותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון וביומי חון, חיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, יתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
We continue on page 77 with the 23rd Psalm. Let's read that together. Page 77 at the bottom. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside the still waters. God revives my spirit and guides me in paths of righteousness for God's name's sake. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. Prepare a table before me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Oh, I thought you were going to finish up.
Warner's Cottage. No, go ahead.
Morris Cottage, page 78.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויעלמה דברה קרותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
We can be seated. It's wonderful to see so many people here. And I know we had a full house here yesterday, but also I'm told that over 1,000 households watched the funeral on Zoom. And that's much more than 1,000 people, in addition to the almost 500 people who were here last night. That's really remarkable and a beautiful tribute to Cantor Kurland and the family. As is our custom, we always share some words of Torah, and after the words of Torah, we'll have some sharing from all of us, as we did last night. So I want to share something that I learned from another Chazan, Cantor David Serkin-Pool, about Psalm 150, which is the very last psalm in the book of Psalms, Sefer Tehillim. That's a psalm in which we talk about musical instruments. So we say, Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei shama, Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei truah. We praise God with drums, with cymbals, with the lyre, with the harp, all these different musical instruments, which were used in the temple in Jerusalem many, many years ago. And then the last line says, Kol hanshama tehallel, hallelujah. All living things praise God, or with every breath we praise God. And Cantor Serkin-Pool said that we can think of these musical instruments, the different musical instruments, the variety of instruments, as metaphors for the diversity of the human community. So some people are a violin, some people are a piano, some people are an accordion, some people are a drum. And all these voices join together in beautiful harmony. And the idea is that every person has their own melody. Just like every instrument has its own particular sound. But just as you can take a violin, which is beautiful by itself, but if you put it together with other instruments in an orchestra, you get a sound and a feeling that no one instrument could produce on its own. And you do it without losing any of the individuality of the instruments in the orchestra. So when you hear an orchestra, you can hear the violins, you can hear the horns, you can hear the tambourine. None of that uniqueness is sacrificed, and yet, because they're all playing together, there's also a new sound which can only come from a community. And it's the same way. So the ideal community, so this psalm really is a psalm about the ideal human community, where ideally each person has their own melody, each person has their moment to shine, and at the same time, we join together in a band or an orchestra, and by choosing to blend our individual melodies, we produce something as a community that none of us could produce on our own. And certainly, one of the examples of that in our community is when Cantor Kurland prepared girls and boys for their bar mitzvah. It was a beautiful combination of an individual moment in the sun, a moment when each child gets to shine on their own. When they're up there doing their haftarah, they're by themselves. But they're doing it as a way of entering into the community, and they're doing it in a way that's celebrated by the community. So there's moments when they're davening and leading the prayers when everybody's joining in, and there are moments when it's just their voice and their voice alone that's heard. And it's been said already many times that the beauty of what the Cantor did was he really recognized that each individual child has their own melody, has their own unique talents and abilities and gifts, and he was sensitive to that, and he didn't make it one size fits all. He educated the kids and he nurtured them in such a way that each child felt that it was their personality that was coming out, even as they were really celebrating a moment of entering into the community as a whole. But there's something else we can say about this as well, and that is that you can also sometimes find your own voice in relationship. We sometimes have the idea that finding your own voice means you do your own thing. But sometimes you can only be yourself when you're in relationship with someone else. It may sound like a contradiction, but it's really not. I mean, for example, you can only be a father if you have children. You can only be a grandparent with grandchildren. You can only be a friend if there's another person involved. That's part of who you are, right? I shared this with Talia the other day. A beautiful musical example of this is a few weeks ago, I saw a documentary about the life of and the career of Dionne Warwick. And Dionne Warwick was in working partnership with two Jewish guys. One was Burt Bacharach, who wrote the melody, and the other was Hal Davis, who wrote the lyrics. And what they portrayed in the documentary was that these three great artists worked together collaboratively all the time. Burt Bacharach didn't just write a melody and then, Dionne Warwick would then figure out how to sing it. He wrote the melody with Dionne Warwick in mind. And Dionne Warwick, in a sense, would not have been Dionne Warwick without Burt Bacharach and vice versa. And neither one of them would have been the same without Hal Davis. Burt Bacharach wouldn't have been Burt Bacharach without Dionne Warwick, because when he wrote the melody, he had a specific singer in mind who could sing the kind of melody that he wanted to actually compose. So it's a different take on how we find ourselves. You can find yourself in a way that requires the participation of another person. In Jewish history, there's a lot of examples of this. Would Maimonides have been Maimonides, the Maimonides that we know, the Rambam that we know, without Aristotle? Impossible, because when he wrote his philosophy, it was a response to Aristotle's philosophy, and a lot of Aristotle's ideas, were very much part of who the Rambam was. Would Yehuda Halevi have been Yehuda Halevi without the culture of Spain, without the culture of Spanish literature and poetry? He wouldn't have written that poetry the same way if he didn't live in that cultural environment. And when I think of Cantor Kurland, he was a person who found his unique voice through his relationship with other people. When we talked about the Cantor, everything we said about him that was really important had to do with the relationship with another person. The way he treated the unique way in which he treated his B'nai Mitzvah, or the way in which he treated each of us. His genius, his special gift, required the participation of other people. It's impossible to think of who Cantor Kurland was without thinking of another person in the room. And I think this is a beautiful lesson that he taught us about what it means to be ourselves, right? To be ourselves, sometimes we think we have to go off someplace and just play our own tune. But Cantor Kurland showed us that very often we can most be ourselves through our connection with another person. It doesn't diminish us. In fact, in many ways, it enhances us. And this is something I always appreciated about the Cantor, and it's a lesson I think it's a lesson for a lifetime, which I hope we will all, when we think of Cantor Kurland, I hope that this is something that we will always cherish and treasure. So, it's time for you to speak. Thank you. There's a lot more to be said. Last night we kind of ran around with the microphone, and there's a lot of people here, thank God. This time, I think it would be better if people came up here. In fact, maybe if you're thinking about saying a few words, come up, and there's no room in the front row, but you can come up and just stand in line, or just we'll wait for you to come up front. That way, everybody, because if somebody's in the back row and I give them the mic, or somebody's in the front row, everybody's going to have to turn around and crane their necks. Okay, thank you. Yes, and if you, please introduce yourself to the congregation, even if you're totally sure that everybody knows who you are. I'm Rabbi Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm Judy Schwartz. When my husband and I got here many years ago, we didn't know a soul. After a while, significant while, somebody we had met suggested that we try Herzl, because we were looking for a synagogue. And the very first time we came here, Cantor Kurland greeted us and made us feel so warm and wonderful that we immediately joined Herzl. my husband and I became Friday night regulars. That's when we'd show up. And after a while, I was talking to Cantor Kurland about Kiddush. I don't remember how it started. And he taught me how to hold the glass. It has to go in the palm of your hand, and all of your fingers have to be touching the glass. Well, every Friday night when he'd do Kiddush, we always sat in the same place, and he'd look at me, is she going to do? And I would look back at him, and even if the cup hadn't come up to my place yet, I would hold my hand this way, and we'd nod at each other. And I considered that my Carol Burnett moment. Some of you may not have heard of her. She is a comedian. She's still around. And she was raised by a grandmother. And at the end of her show, every time she would pull on her ear as a, "Hi, Grandma," and that was her symbol. So every time we do Kiddush, that's my pulling of the ear and the cantor. And he would, look at me, and we'd nod at each other. Okay. So then we could go on.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. Yes, beautiful.
Hi, I'm going to introduce myself with my title, Homora Nance, since I'm going to speak about my students. So, one of whom was Noam. On Friday at school, we were having Maccabia, which is supposed to be a really fun day. It's color wars. The kids are all on teams, and they're competing all day. They don't have any classes. But also, we had the news of the Cantor's passing, and there were several students in the middle school who either recently had a B'nai Mitzvah or studying for theirs, and who are members here. And they were really impacted by that news. And it made it really hard for them to enjoy themselves. And towards the end of the day, we had our song competition. And one of the students dedicated her team's song to Cantor Kurland. And I think that really speaks to the impact that the Cantor had on the young people that he worked with. I know from all of my students who have come through Herzl that they would talk about their sessions with the Cantor and how much they loved working with him. And I've been to many, many, many B'nai Mitzvot here for my students, and really loved seeing the interactions that he would have with them up on the bima, and the support that he gave them, and the real love and joy that he brought to their celebration. So really, on behalf of myself and the JDS community and the students there who have worked with the Cantor, I'm just sending you so much love.
Thank you, Nance.
Hi, my name is Cindy Droker, and there's one thing that you guys had said about your dad would always step out and dance whenever he could. And one of the kinds of dances that he liked to do was Israeli folk dancing. He loved it. And I would say, "Come dancing." And he goes, "I can't. I don't have the time." And one time I asked you, Sandy, "Can we kidnap him and take him dancing?" And you said, "No, he doesn't have the time, but he'd love to." And one time I was teaching a class back here, just a one-night class, and of all people I forgot to tell was the Cantor. And all of a sudden he came running down the hall, and he goes, "You're dancing, music." I said, "Come in and join us." He goes, "I can't, I don't have the time, I have to get back to my bar mitzvah." But there was one time when he could, and that was at Simchat Torah. And he would sing the melodies of the dance, and we would all dance, and I would give him a list to do 3 dances, Zimar Atik, Mayim, and Od Lo Haftidai. And I'd post-it notes everywhere because he'd forget. And then all of a sudden, we'd get through the program, and I'd motion to my wrist and do a little example, and he'd all of a sudden start dancing, singing the song. And it didn't matter where we were carrying Torahs. He never gave us a cue that he was going to start singing. But he loved to dance, and one time, this is off a different story, but Rabbi Rosenbaum here started dancing a dance called Hora Agadati, and you were leading it. And it was amazing. He was amazing. And Cantor got in there to do it with him while he was singing, and it was joyful to see. But there was another thing he would do related to dance and music, and he had a secret. and you only knew the secret if you were an Israeli folk dancer. And he would change the melodies of the prayers occasionally to Israeli folk dance songs. And we would know them. And he'd do it occasionally. He had a few that he would do that would fit the prayer, and he knew the rhythm to how to sing it. And we'd get up and we'd kind of dance in our spot there. And matter of fact, about 3 months ago, less than 3 months ago, he did that. And Sharon Mossman and I were way up there in the corner, and we started dancing. And he went like this to us. And afterwards he said, I saw you dancing up there. And he said, it brought so much joy to me. And he goes, but I couldn't join you. I just couldn't. So I hope we can keep the dancing going in honor of him. With someone singing the dances for Simchat Torah, it'd be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Hi, I'm Herb Weisbaum, the official MC for Herzl fundraisers. Former member of the board of directors, still come back to the synagogue from time to time. Was on the board that hired Rabbi Rosenbaum, one of my proudest moments of being on the board of directors. And I think you guys know how much I love Brad and how special he was. Whenever he called me, I called him the singer. I never referred to him as Cantor, Kurland. It's always the singer. He'll go, yeah. So I have two very quick stories to tell you. One is really touching, and the one is probably is my Carol Burnett moment. When my mother-in-law, Deb's mom, was in the hospital, and she was about ready to leave us, and she was in a coma, Brad came and visited, and my mother-in-law was Sephardic, and he knew how much she loved Ladino songs. And her eyes were closed, and we were hoping she was there and hearing us, but we had no idea, and he sang her a Ladino song. And when he got done the song, she opened her eyes, a tear came down her cheek, and within an hour she was gone. And I told him I would ever, for the rest of my life, be grateful for what he did and how peaceful he made her life at the end. And that's the kind of guy, as you know, that Brad was. Here's my moment, the little ear moment. So I will, for as long as I'm on this earth, every time I hear the Olenu, I will think of your dad and Brad, because we had this little thing going that I wanted him to sing Shehuno Teshamayim. And every time he sang it, even at high holidays, he would find me up in the seats, and he would go like this, and I would go like this. And that was our every single time. And if he didn't sing it, I would say, you skipped it. And he'd go, the rabbi was telling me to wrap it up. And I'm going, hey, I don't care what the rabbis say. Like another 30 seconds, it's Shabbat. Where are we going? We're going to go to Kmart? I mean, do the thing. So every time he did it, he would find me and look at me and do that. And so every time I say the prayer and sing that paragraph for the rest of my life, I will always think of Brad and what a special guy he was. And we know how much you miss him, and we all miss him too. He was a part of all of our lives. And again, as Rabbi Rosenbaum in that beautiful eulogy said yesterday, and thank you for that. Thanks for letting us share him. Thanks for letting us share your husband and your dad, because he made this world a better place every single day. Thank you. Rabbi Maslin, you're standing up. Good for you.
Irv, good to see you. He's right. I'm Rabbi Bob Maslin, and I'm a newcomer to Herzl. My dad joined in 23. Oh, that's this year. Oh, no, that was 1923. But then we're talking about Brad, not me. And so one of the things I loved about Brad was his sense of humor. And if you still go down the hallway and you see his office, and he has all these puns on the door. He loved to punish people. And I do too. I don't know if you've noticed that. And I like to do bilingual puns. I like to do like Hebrew and English puns. So in the Ashrei, where it says, Ugdulatecha asaprena, which means, and of his greatness you shall tell, or you shall speak. But it also sounds like, you shall make great the soprano. And so I told him that that's why all the cantorial music is written so high. And so whenever he would lead Ashrei out loud, he would go like the first 6 verses and come to Ugdolatacha soprano and would stop. And then he'd go to the end. And when he would stop, he'd give me kind of the high sign. And so every time we say Ashrei, I'm going to think of him. And he was my friend. I got a chance to see him a couple of weeks ago in the hospital, and thank you for that. And so I sang a little bit of Esa Einai, and he mouthed the words along with me. And then he said he was fighting the Malach HaMavis. He said that. And I told him that in the Chad Gadya, the Kadosh Baruch Hu defeats the Malach HaMavis. And, but, you know, he's had a complete recovery. He's not suffering anymore. And for that, we need to be very grateful.
Thank you, Bob.
Hi, I'm Deborah Lurie, and
I'm Rachel Schwartz.
we're 2 of the Schneider girls who were fortunate enough to grow up down the street from the Kurland family. And also, our claim to fame is that we were second of the Benot Mitzvah after Brad and Sandy came to Herzl. What I've really loved hearing about, you know, since the diagnosis and then since last week is the way that Cantor was able to make everyone feel like he belonged to them. And you can tell from all the stories that we've heard. And, you know, our cohort, you know, and who are raising our kids here, who have gone through now their B'nai Mitzvot, and weddings and brisses and baby namings and everything, you know, he felt like, you know, everyone feels like he's part of their family because he was there every time there's an important event. And that's just such a special quality that I know he taught you guys. And we've been privileged to be able to grow up with you guys, you know, from your own births and baby namings and B'nai Mitzvah and planning parties and Sukkot and barbecue salmon and chocolate chip cookies and what? Oh, and boat rides too. So we share so many of the same memories growing up. And one thing that I loved is, you know, we're so grateful for you guys to be part of our family, but so blessed to be part of yours. And so we hope to continue sharing simchas with you because I know for me, you know, coming home, whether from school or you know, times that we weren't here, coming home was seeing you guys and seeing Cantor here at Herzl. It always felt like home, and it feels like home, and it's going to be something that's missing. So I know.
Even with all the good times, there have been difficult times. And just on a personal level, when Lainey was born, and Brad was, I think, the first visitor we had. My daughter was born premature and was in the hospital for a long time, and Brad came and visited. And then when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I got a phone call very early on from Brad, which was very touching, and I know has, you know, I'm sure many in the room have experienced the same thing. And he sang to me, and it was just really lovely. And so that's the professional side. And then I also had the privilege of designing their kitchen when we did a kitchen remodel. And it was kind of a funny dynamic, not funny, haha, but, an interesting dynamic because, the kitchen is for Brad. Brad did the cooking, and Sandy and I worked together more, and because, Brad's busy, really, really busy. So Sandy and I did a lot of the planning, but knowing full well that how much joy it brought Brad to have that new kitchen. And he mentioned it to me pretty much every time I saw him from then on. And how long ago was that? That was 15 years, 20 years ago? I don't know. It was a long time ago. Oh, were you born? I don't know. I don't know if the kid. Yeah, anyway, it was a long time ago. So that was a privilege. It was two of my absolute favorite clients of all time, and it was just a privilege, and I still remember that. I mean, just vividly, by giving you that extra space on the side, and anything, anyway, all that storage. So, and then I just also want to, Sandy, yesterday, I have to tell you what just touched my heart. When you mentioned yesterday that the request you made at the cemetery that Brad be by your dad. Growing up, I mean, we've been neighbors for 30, probably 8 years you were down the street a little bit further and then you came up the street. That just touched my heart. And I know they're not as close as we would have liked, but it does feel like they're still down the block from each other. So they'll be watching out for each other. So, love you.
Hello, I might sit down because what I don't understand is how he greeted me and every one of you at every Shabbat service. He somehow made his way over to me to greet me, give his love to my beautiful wife, my children, every single time. And apparently he did that to everyone else, and he had little shtick with so many people throughout the service with everyone. We've heard that theme throughout the last 2 days. We shared the same birthday every single year. One of us would call each other or text each other without fail for the last 20 years. And I really enjoyed the personal touch. Another theme that many of you have talked about is connections with you, each and every one of you. This past week, the last few days, me and all my group that graduated high school together in the religious school, we've been texting back and forth. For years, when we get together, we use, yeah, sing it, you're hired. In fact, I still use that one all the time at my work, every time I think of Cantor. I've had the good fortune to direct and write spiels with the Cantor, and I think anyone who's been in a cast knows that every single spiel I've ever written has included some solos for him that just say yeah or give him a little opportunity to sing and do one of his signature songs. And some of the roles I've actually written for him include Ahash Bezos. I did, because we've heard that his love for Yiddish, and I gave him Yeshiva Bicher instead of Yeshiva Bucher for the Muppets. And then the personal favorite one that I wrote for him was Chazan Solo for our Star Wars. And this past March, when he first started going back into the hospital, was this year's Purim spiel, and I gave him a call and said, I completely understand if you're not up for it. I said, if you're not, would you be okay if Avi, my middle son, took your part? And he said, I'd be honored. So Avi did it. So thank you. Thank you, and I love your family.
Hello, I'm Mindy Stern, Alon and David's mom. I grew up Orthodox, but when my parents retired to the land of our people, also known as Florida, They were drawn to the more egalitarian nature of conservative Judaism, and they joined a shul. And my mother started singing in the choir or the chorus of their shul down in the Fort Lauderdale area. But every time they came to visit us here on Mercer Island, they came to shul here because they felt very much at home, and it's really because of Brad. And after maybe their first visit, Brad and my mom started talking shop, which was about the choral music. And somehow my mother said, "Oh, I'm going to send you a cassette tape of this song that we're singing in our shul." And she followed up. She really did mail it. And you probably still have a cassette player in your house. Because every single time I ran into your dad, into Brad, he would tell me how he loved that tape and how it brought a new kind of music into his life and how he listened to it over and over again. And it was like a special connection that we had. And some of you may know that there's a TikTok sensation right now, an actress who plays Denise, the receptionist in heaven. And in her heavy New York accent, she goes, yeah, you did this, you did that, but you were mean to your son when he came out. So no, there's no place for you here. And I just imagine my mother and Bradlee up there because they got gold, platinum, whatever status, angel status, and they're singing together in heaven right now.
I'm Joyce Stiefel, and one of the things that that Rabbi Rosenbaum talked tonight was about his special relationship with the B'nai Mitzvot children. But what really always impressed me is our sons, Jason and Nathan, who are adults, had their bar mitzvahs many years ago. Wherever Cantor Kurland would see them, it did not have to be here. The grocery store, somebody's house, he immediately knew who they were and greeted them like he just saw them yesterday, even if it had been months. And that was so beautiful. The other thing I have to say is, as a physician, I have seen that not everybody is there for their family. They may be there for their job, but not for their family. And clearly, Cantor Kurland was there for his family. Over the past 2.5 months, his family has been there almost 24/7 with him. And to see that, because even people who have been there for their family has not been there for them when they were sick. So kol hakavod to Sandy, to Akiva, to Talia, and Noam.
Hi, I'm Dina Halan. My two sons were both fortunate enough to have Cantor Kurland help them for their bar mitzvahs, and my favorite thing was listening to them practice with him, whether it was in here or then over Zoom and listening in. I sat there because I wanted to hear them. It brought me great joy. Cantor Kurland was so sweet. When my older son went off to Schechter for the first summer, my son doesn't write. I hear nothing from him. But I got a phone call from Cantor Kurland, who called me to let me know that he saw Nathan. Nathan looks great, and he's having a wonderful time. And that phone call was priceless. It was exactly what I needed. And last year, Nathan was an ODET at camp, and they have folks write little letters so that when they're, climbing the mountain and stuff, at a tough time, they get to read what people had written about and for them. And Cantor Kurland was kind enough to write a few words for Nathan. I know that he. That meant a lot to him. I think that was one of the highlights of his trip was doing that and then seeing, reading the letters. So thank you for that. Two other really quick things. My husband and I were at a concert earlier in the month. They Might Be Giants, their 30th celebration of an album, which seems to have nothing to do with Cantor Kurland. Only one of the musicians plays the accordion. And the moment that he's playing, I'm like, I have to tell Cantor Kurland this. So I think there's going to be a lot of moments for all of us when we think of Cantor Kurland outside of here, just in our life, that bring us great joy. And lastly, my younger son's bar mitzvah, he shared the same parsha as Cantor Kurland. So I will think of him every year on that. So thank you so much. Thank you for sharing Cantor Kurland with all of us.
My name is Carl Birkenwald. I moved with my family here in 1986. Met the Cantor, or as I called him over the years, Chazen, a Yiddish way of saying it, soon after, and we became friends fairly early, and good friends. And starting, late 1990s, early 2000s, I think the late 1990s, we decided to start having weekly meets, schmoozes, at the older and smaller of the two downtown Mercer Island Starbucks stores. And so we would meet weekly as long as we were available, most weeks, and that continued for over 20 years. And we talked about a variety of things. We would talk about current events and things happening in the world, in Israel, the United States, and we would attempt unsuccessfully to solve all the problems of the world. But we shared a common interest in Yiddish, in Yiddishkeit, and in things Jewish like that, and in Yiddish culture. We both spoke a fair amount of Yiddish, but we didn't, at least until that point, have that many opportunities to practice. And so we would start working on our Yiddish and speak Yiddish to each other as best we could. And invariably, we would be stumped, either Chazen or me. And so I don't know whose idea it was originally, but at some point, fairly early on, one of us decided to call our mom. Cantor's mom back in Massachusetts, may she rest in peace, and my mom, who was an excellent Yiddish speaker, and my mom, a native Yiddish speaker originally from Ukraine, may she rest in peace. And so Cantor would call his mother. We'd be stumped on a phrase or a word, and he'd say, "I want you to talk to Carl." And so he'd put me on, and I'd try my best Yiddish to ask her, "Wie sucht man?" How do you say? And I'd say the English word or expression that we were looking for, and invariably she'd have the answer. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And then we'd schmooze for a little while more, the Cantor's mom and me, and then on the phone. And then the next week, when we would get stumped, I'd say, "Well, let's call my mom." So I'd call my mother, and I'd put her on with a Chazen. And he would greet her in Yiddish, and they would speak for 3 or 4 minutes, and invariably my mother had the answer, the correct word or expression in Yiddish. And so that went on for many years, and we continued these meetings, not quite every week, but into early this year. It was a treasure for me to have that relationship. I remember my mother would tell me periodically, "Oh, your Cantor is such a wonderful man. He speaks such a beautiful mama lashon, mother tongue, meaning Yiddish." And so those times and those meetings are moments I will always treasure, along with our friendship and my love for the Chazen. I remember at some point early on, I told him, I said, "Ich habe nicht Menschen mit Meimen zu reden Yiddish. I don't have people to speak Yiddish with." And he'd say, "Ich auch, me too." And so, it started, and we would do that. And up until that point, I really didn't have people that I would see with any frequency with whom I could speak Yiddish, but I had Brad, and I loved him.
So hi, my name is Jill Nogi. My husband and I and our 2 boys, I think we've been members of Herzl maybe 9 years or so. And Evan was 2 when we joined. My older son had his bar mitzvah last summer, and he worked with the Cantor over Zoom the whole time. And we were in Israel for his bar mitzvah, and I have a voicemail message on my cell phone. I've kept it all this time. And it was the Cantor
when we got back from Israel in his sing-songy "Hello, Jill," and wanted to ask how our trip was, how did Jacob do, and do we need anything else, because we were getting ready for Jacob to lead a Friday night service here at the synagogue once we got back. So I'm sharing all this with you all because if I can figure out how to do it, right? When my father passed away about 10 years ago, somebody sent my brother and I a recording of his voice on her voicemail, and it was just the biggest gift, right, to have the gift of his voice. So I wanted to offer, if I can figure out how to do it and how to share it, I'm more than happy to share that voicemail message with you, because it makes me so happy, and I think it would make you very happy too. Or very sorry for your loss.
One more? Or two more? Okay, two more. Save some for tomorrow night.
Hi, my name is Judy Findley, and I've been a member at Herzl my entire life. And I'm speaking on behalf of my sisters who are up there, Mimi Sternberg and Becky Aronchik. A lot of us have talked about going through the bar and bat mitzvah process with Cantor Kurland, and I thought about this all day today, that he knew all along that he wasn't just teaching us to prepare for a day, he was teaching us lessons to prepare for our entire lives. When I had my bat mitzvah, he insisted that I break the habit of saying Adonai instead of Adonai, and he was right. People don't like it when you get their names wrong. Thank you. Becky remembers he wrote Goslow on the top of her book, Go Slow. And it's true that the best things in life are earned slow and steady. When my son Jonathan had his bar mitzvah, he was told to speak louder. And it's true, don't waste an opportunity to have your voice heard, especially when you've worked so hard. And he told my son Andrew, practice makes perfect. The same lesson of the Boy Scouts, always be prepared. And my daughter, whose bat mitzvah was a month ago today, after every meeting, he would tell her to give a hug to her grandparents. And there's so many lessons there. Stay connected to others. Don't pass up an opportunity to tell someone that you love them. The connection of the generations. But most importantly, Mimi's bat mitzvah was notably his first, and he always reminded her, and he would mention it when she came to synagogue, and it meant so much to both of them. And with this lesson, never forget where you came from. The summary of all of this is that he built this amazing community, and we're all still here for each other. The sound of his voice is absorbed in the walls here. And he'll never be forgotten. Thank you.
Hi, Alon. I was in bar mitzvah class with Noam and a few people who are here also. And sixth grade bar mitzvah class, we'd be here Saturday mornings, and the value of kavod was definitely a work in progress. But we had a tradition where we'd come here for Shabbat morning service, and at the end of the service, all the future bar mitzvah boys and girls would be up, and we'd sing Adon Olam, I think like for that minute, the mischief was put on hold, and we were alongside Cantor Kurland, making eye contact with him as we sang Adon Olam. And I think like his presence on the bima, he never called us out for anything, even if we might have deserved it. But his presence on the bima demanded respect. And I know like watching him on the bima all those Shabbat mornings made it extra special to take it for my bar mitzvah, and I'm sure many bar and bat mitzvah boys and girls can say the same. And yeah, that was very special to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, such beautiful, beautiful comments. And please come back tomorrow night and the night after, same time, 7 o'clock, and let's continue to share. We close with traditional words of comfort to Sandy, to Akiva, to Talia, and to Noam. Hamakom menachem b'tov sha'ar v'leitzim v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort and sustain you, as God has comforted those who mourn for Zion in Jerusalem. And let us all say, Amen.
And friends, before you depart, if you could please return either your Sidurim, your prayer books, or the copy that you took to the spot from where you took it, so that we'll have it tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good evening.